Hey there, I'm davidinark, and in this video I'll be showing you how to install DOSBox-X with Windows for Workgroups 3.11. We'll also set up networking so you can play IPX-based games like the original Doom or Duke 3D online with your friends. Plus, we'll set up internet networking so you can even surf the web like it's 1993. As a bonus, I'll even show you a cool program that makes your Windows 3.11 look and act like Windows 95 or Windows XP. Now, before we get started, let me say this is just one way to install DOSBox-X with Windows for Workgroups plus networking. There are many ways to achieve this goal, but this is how I set it up on my computer, and I thought it might help other folks as well. I'll have a link in the description to the instructions that I'm covering in the video. There are a slew of files that you'll need, so be sure to check the list. In fact, let's go over a quick list here. You need DOSBox-X for Windows. You're going to need NPcap, and that's what helps your computer pass network info to DOSBox-X. You're going to need Windows for Workgroups 3.11 installation files, S3 video driver files, Win32s, the 32-bit enhancement for Windows 3.x. You're going to need a program called PCTCP, which is TCP/IP networking for DOS and Windows in order to get on the internet inside your Windows 3 environment. I suggest getting Netscape 3 or 4, whichever version you prefer. Also, Internet Explorer 5, just so you have a couple of different ways you can surf the internet. Probably going to want to grab a copy of WinZIP 5. I also recommend maybe either Microsoft Office or Wordperfect. Wordperfect 6 preferably for Windows, just so you have a word processor to be able to use inside the system. Then there's a program called Calmira-XP, and that is the Windows XP shell interface for Windows 3 that makes your system look and act like Windows XP. Much more of that later in the video. In fact, that probably will get a whole video by itself. You also want to find copies of Doom, Duke 3D, any other DOS games you want to play, or for that matter, any other Windows 3 software, games, any other DOS software, whatever else you want to put into your DOSBox-X system running Windows. Okay, first up, you're going to install NPcap. Now, basically, you're just going to run the program. You're going to take the defaults during the setup. There is an option for Wi-Fi adapters, so you can check that if you want to try to capture your Wi-Fi card as a network card for DOSBox. I can tell you in my experience, I've got a USB Wi-Fi adapter, and DOSBox-X never could find the adapter in any of the options that I picked. So I actually have to use my built-in onboard Ethernet. So just be aware of that. You might not run into that problem, especially if your Wi-Fi card is built in, but since mine is not, it couldn't. So once that is done, however, then we are ready to install DOSBox-X. All right, now as we get started, one of the things that I recommend is that in your downloads folder, create a DOSBox stuff folder so that you can keep stuff organized. And inside the DOSBox stuff folder, that is where I would put your DOSBox-X Windows setup file. And then also I would create a new folder and call it C-drive. And what that is going to do is later we will copy the C-drive folder into the DOSBox installation, and everything that is in this folder, DOSBox is going to treat it as though that is the C drive or the main drive of the computer. So after you've collected all of your files, they will be in this C-drive folder. All right, so from here, the next thing we're going to do is double-click the DOSBox setup. So just double-click that like you normally would. It's going to pop up here. Just hit next, next, and next again. Now, it's going to ask you or tell you that you're running a 64-bit version of Windows, or at least I am anyway. It says, do you want to install the 64-bit version of DOS, so of DOSBox-X? So yes, I do. It's going to ask you which version or which build you want. I'm using SDL1 because it's the default. So I hit next. Then it's going to ask you which version of DOS do you want DOSBox to say that it's running. And I'm going to pick DOS 622. Hit next. Then there is an option, that window that comes up here, and this copy all builds to subdirectories will already be checked. You want to uncheck that, basically because you don't want all of the other copies or versions of DOSBox-X on your computer unless you plan to play with them. But for the most part, just uncheck that box. All right. Then there are a couple of other options here. And by default, the first two are checked and the last is not. Basically, the first one says, do you want to add a run open with DOSBox-X menu? Essentially, what that lets you do is you could right-click on any file, and that would be an option in that side menu to tell it, yeah, run this with DOSBox-X, and it will launch your DOSBox-X and then launch that program. That's up to you if you want that or not. I don't in particular. Then do you want a desktop shortcut or do you want a quick launch shortcut? That again is totally up to you. We click next and install. Now it's going to install your DOSBox-X. It goes pretty quickly, then comes up with some README stuff. Yeah, whatever. Click next. And then you have these options here at the end, and you want to uncheck README and uncheck Launch DOSBox-X because we're not ready to start yet. We still have some prep work we've got to do before we are ready to get in there and launch DOSBox-X. So click Finish. That brings me back to my downloads folder here with my DOSBox stuff folder. I'm going to right click on the C- drive and I'm going to copy that. So what that's going to do is that's going to take the C- drive folder. I'm going to copy it. Then over on my local disk, I'm going to choose that. Now I have a DOSBox-X folder. I'm going to open up that. And I'm going to right click in a blank space and paste my C- drive folder. So that is copying all of the stuff that is in that C- drive folder into my DOSBox environment. One of the really cool things about DOSBox is that it lives only inside the DOSBox folder by default. Which is really, really helpful. It keeps everything neat, organized. It stops your system from spilling out into other aspects of your computer. Everything is just contained in this one folder. Now, we've got the C- drive folder. You'll notice that there's also a drive Z folder. And drive Z is a folder that DOSBox uses as its main system folder. So we're not going to do anything with that, but I do want to create a new folder called A-drive because what that'll do is that will let the system have an A drive. As you might know, there is some software, you may not know, but there is some software that you download off the internet and it is required to run from a floppy disk. And by default, DOSBox doesn't have any drives at all. So this is going to be a way that we are going to set up the A drive as a floppy in your system. If you want to have dual drives, then you can actually create a B drive as well, and that would give you dual floppies. That's completely up to you. Now, before we go any further, however, we still can't run the system yet. We've got to do some changes to the system itself. The first thing we have to do is right-click on the DOSBox-X application. Right-click on that and go down and choose Create Shortcut, because we are going to create a shortcut to DOSBox because in order to get things set up, there's a special command we have to run. In order to do that, you're going to right-click on the newly created shortcut and go to Properties. Once the Properties box pops up, you're going to look for the target line. You're going to move your mouse to the very right edge and click out here next to DOSBox-X.exe. Hit space on your keyboard, press space, dash, console, C-O-N-S-O-L-E. And that is going to tell the computer that when we run DOSBox, we want a special console to pop up. So you're going to hit OK there. and that is a shortcut that we'll use several times during the setup. And then once things are set up, you won't actually need that shortcut anymore unless you just want it. It's going to give you all kinds of background information. That's up to you. Now, we still can't run it yet. We have to make some changes in here to this CONF file, to the configuration file. If you double click the configuration file, then Windows is going to pop up and say, okay, well, what do you want me to do with this? By default, Notepad should show up there. If it does not, you can click on the drop down for more apps, and if you scroll down, then Notepad should show up in the list down there. In my case, I want Notepad. My Notepad was at the top, so I can click Notepad, and then I'm going to uncheck the box that says always open this app, or always use this to open conf files. You could probably leave it checked. I've never done that just because I don't want it to mess anything up. I don't want it to accidentally open up Notepad when I'm actually trying, when a program is actually trying to read or run a configuration file. So I uncheck this box. So I hit OK, and that is going to take you into the DOSBox-X configuration file. This has all of the different settings that are available to DOSBox-X. Don't let it scare you. There's a whole lot of stuff in here. If you are so inclined, by all means, you can leaf through it and look through it. But I'm going to guide you through the items that we specifically need for our installation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to jump to the very bottom of the document. And the easiest way to do that is to press Control-End on your keyboard. So hold Control, tap End. That immediately jumps you down to the bottom of the file. So we need to add a few things in here. The first thing we have to do is we have to tell DOSBox that we have a C drive. So you type mount space C space C-drive, and that tells DOSBox, or DOSBox-X, that you have a C drive and you want it to be called the letter C. So we also want to mount an A drive as the A drive folder. So again, we are telling DOSBox-X that we want to be able to have an A drive in our DOSBox environment, and we're pointing it to this folder. And the fact that I'm not putting any special designations in front of that means that this C-drive folder and this A-drive folder are in the same place that DOSBox is. Keeps life simple. Everything's just all in one folder. Now, another thing, another thing we have to do with this is for the A drive, at the end of that, you have to add a -T space floppy. That lets DOSBox know that this is a floppy drive, or the equivalent of a floppy drive. Likewise, I could mount D. So in DOSBox, I want my D drive to be my physical D drive, which in my case happens to be a type of CD-ROM, right? We have a CD-ROM at drive D. Yours may be a different letter. So if on your computer, your CD drive is E, then you would say, you could say mount D at E:\\, because this D:\\, or E:\\, is the actual place on your physical computer where your CD is located. Now, another thing we have to do is we're going to add a couple of lines that don't really do anything yet, but they will down the road. And since we're here, we just as well do it. So you're going to add in C:\\, NE2000 space 0x60. And that will eventually load in the network card. Now, you're going to notice that this says C:\. That is not your actual hard drive on your physical computer. Remember, up here, we mounted C, right? That's what this is saying. This is saying now that now that DOSBox has a C drive, I can point things at that folder. So really, this is saying run this program that is located inside that C-drive folder. Don't worry if it's a little all weird and confusing. It'll be fine. All right. So the next thing that we want to type in here is call C:\\ backslash. And by the way, this is the backslash. This is not the one where the question mark is. This is the other one that is usually somewhere near the enter key on your keyboard. autoexec.bat. What that is telling DOSBox is go out and run the autoexec.bat file that is in that C drive, that C-drive folder, and then come back again. That's what call means. Call means go run it, but then come back. And the reason why we're doing that is because the very last line in here is going to be just C: on a line by itself. And what that is going to tell DOSBox is that after it's done booting up, jump out to the now hard drive that is inside DOSBox. Again, don't worry if this is getting a little weird. Just trust me. You'll see what it does. All right. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. Now, I need to make a couple of additional changes. So we're going to jump back to the top of the document. To jump back to the top of the document, you're going to hit Control Home. So hold the Control key on your keyboard and tap the Home key. That will help you jump back up to the top. Now, I need to find a couple of things in order to make some changes. So to find in Notepad, I hold Control and hit F. That is going to open the Find box. And the first thing that I'm going to find or look for is the word cycles, C-Y-C-L-E-S. All right. When I'm looking for cycles, then I'm going to click this Find Next about 7 or 8 times before I get to the one that I want. So when I hit Find Next, it's going to find the word cycles throughout the document. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll know I'm done when the highlighted cycles is right below the word CPU type. All right. So that's the one we're looking for. Cycles. And you'll see here where it says cycles equals auto. We're going to change auto to the word max. What that's going to do is that is going to let DOSBox run as fast as it can. So frankly, your Windows 3 environment is going to be smoking fast compared to what it normally might be. All right. So again, once we type in max, I need to hit Control Home. Take us back to the top. And then the next thing I'm going to do is in my Find What box, I'm going to change out the word cycles for NE2000. So it's NE2000. I'm going to hit Find Next. Now in this case, it automatically takes me where I want to go. Whoops, sorry. So, and that is the NE2000 inside these brackets. Now, the NE2000 is the network card or the emulated network card that is going to provide network and internet access to your DOSBox environment. So the first thing we're going to do is on the NE2000 equals false line, we're going to take out the word false and put in the word true because we do want one. Now, here's another weird thing. The IRQ, normally you can have this set to anything you want to, but in my experience, DOSBox only finds it at 9, so I'm changing the IRQ to 9. Your mileage may vary. Then the next line is your MAC address, and I recommend you change the last 2 characters to a different hex set, and so I would, just for the sake of argument, I would just do AB. Just kind of a reference point, if you're going to do multiple DOSBox installations in the same network, if you're going to have multiple ones in your house, then you are going to want to change this MAC address so that it is unique for each DOSBox instance that you're running. All right. Now, for now, you're going to leave this realNIC equals list, and we're going to talk about what to do with that here in just a moment. All right, now if you're going to be playing IPX type games, that's like Doom or Duke Nukem 3D on a local network using the IPX protocol, then there's an IPX section right here above the NE2000, and you can change IPX equals true instead of false. That's completely optional, totally up to you. Just wanted to throw that out there in case you were end up looking for it later, or if that's something you already know that you're going to do. So you can do that. Another optional thing that you can do if I control home back to the top and I search once again, whoops, sorry about that. If I search once again for auto lock, and then we hit find next, find next, find next, find next, so 4 times, then auto lock by default is set to false. And what this means is that auto lock is if you click your mouse inside DOSBox, auto lock true means that DOSBox will then take control of your mouse, and to get out, you hit Control F10. If you leave it at false, then you have to actually hit Control F10 in order for DOSBox to take control. I personally like to be able to just click in the box in order for it to take over. So I'm going to go ahead and make that true. And that way I've got that all set up. So once you've got all those settings, you can close out of the DOSBox config file, make sure you save it, and that's going to bring you back to your DOSBox folder. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to launch DOSBox for the first time using the shortcut that we added that console to. Now, when DOSBox fires up here, it's going to open up the DOSBox window in the front, and there's going to be some errors and some other things. Don't worry about that for now. Just kind of move that out of the way. But the console should also have opened up in the background. And in the console, you're going to see a list that says network interface list, and it's going to have several different items in that list, depending on how many network adapters you have installed. Plus, if you're already doing things like VMware or VirtualBox, there may be adapters listed there. What you're looking for is the name of the adapter that applies to the actual adapter you have inside your system. So in my particular case, you can see that log 4 shows Realtek Ethernet controller. I would venture most folks are probably going to have Realtek in some form or fashion in the name. That's kind of a standard network adapter that's built into a lot of motherboards. Yours may or may not be that. But look for the brand. And if you're not sure, then you may have to refer to your system manual, what have you. But once you've got the name of the real adapter, in this case, this Realtek Ethernet controller, I know that it is now number 4. So once I've got that number, I'm going to close DOSBox because I don't need it right now. I've got to go back into the config file. So I'm going to open up the config file, go to Notepad, uncheck the Always Open box. And again, I'm going to find the NE2000 section. Excuse me. And before I told you about the real NIC equals list, and this is where you change the word list to the number that was in that network adapter list. So once you change that to 4, then you can once again close the configuration and save it. And now you can go back into DOSBox. At this point, you actually don't have to use the console shortcut anymore. You can actually just go directly to the application. It's totally up to you. If you want the console open in the back, you can, but I am just going to double click on DOSBox because I like it. I'm going to go ahead and maximize it. One of the things that you'll notice is that when you launch DOSBox, one of the ways that you know that the network controller is working is that you now have this Ethernet address, and it should match what you have in your config file. If it is all Fs, then that means something is wrong. Most likely, you either picked the wrong real NIC number or you have the wrong interrupt number. Those are the two issues, the two places where I have seen things go awry. So you'll notice that, remember in our config file at the very bottom, I told it to go to C. And so now if I do a directory of C, you'll notice that I have my disks, my Duke Nukem, Netscape, right? I'm not looking at the C drive of my actual computer. I'm looking at the C drive folder because we told DOSBox that the C-drive folder is our C drive. So at this point, we are now to the point where we can install Windows for Workgroups. Now, In order to do that, I have it all. I have all the files in this WFW311 folder. So CD WFW311. If I do a directory here, you see those are all the setup files, and I can run setup. So welcome to Windows for Workgroups. I'm just going to take the Express setup. It's going to start copying those Windows files and start to get my Windows 311 environment all set up. So right now it's attempting to detect my network card, and then here it's asking me for my full name and company. You'll notice that there's a mouse on the screen, and then you have my mouse. Once I click inside the box, you'll hear a confirmation tone, and now I have control of the mouse in the box. I cannot get out of this box, right? So you notice if I move to the bottom, if I move to the top, I can't get to anywhere but inside this setup. If I hit Control F10, again, I get a confirmation, and now notice that I get my tiny little mouse back again. All right, so for my name, davidinark, company is davidinark. You don't need a product number for Windows 311, so we're going to continue, and we'll just continue here. And we're going to let it install the Windows files. And that definitely doesn't take very long. Generally speaking, you're just going to say no printer attached. DOSBox doesn't really have a way to pass printer information to the system, so it's not going to do you any good anyway. And then here you have network settings. You'll notice that it was able to detect the fact that you had that NE2000 network controller. So I'm just going to say, yeah, that's fine. Continue. Notice here it's asking you for that interrupt, which is that IRQ. Make sure this matches the number that you had in the config file, which in my case was 9. And it says, do you want a different setting? No, just let that go. What do I want my username to be? Blah, blah, blah. And we just hit OK. I am going to tell you right now that the Windows networking actually won't work. Okay, so just know that. We will be able to get on the internet when this is all done, but as far as Windows networking, it's not really working inside DOSBox, so just be aware of that. In the meantime, Windows has also gone through here and it's attempted to find all kinds of different programs. You can hit OK and just walk through these if you want to, or you can cancel out of the setup applications part and just let it, not do that. So I'm just going to tell it to cancel that because I don't really care. I don't want it to create a bunch of groups. Cancel that. Okay, so once we cancel through all of that, then we are going to skip the tutorial because we don't care about the tutorial. And then you are presented with the option of restarting the computer or returning to DOS. Now, there's a weird thing that happens with DOSBox. And I don't know if it's DOSBox or just DOSBox-X. However, restarting the computer doesn't actually restart it, and you lose like network connectivity and things get a little wacky. So what I generally say is return to DOS. Once you have returned to DOS, you want to Control F10 to get your mouse back, and you're going to close DOSBox. So I'm going to click the X, and then now that I've closed the DOSBox, then I am going to go ahead and double click to rerun DOSBox. I know it seems a little weird and counterintuitive, but it's just the way it is. So we got DOSBox running up here again. Notice again, we see my Ethernet address, so we know everything is running good there. So now I can type win, and I will get my Windows set up. Or go into Windows. You'll notice that this Windows for Workgroups error comes up. That's fine. Just hit OK. We'll actually fix that here in just a minute. But now I am in Windows 3.1. Hey, look at there. Now at this point, we just kind of have the basics set up. So one of the things that I recommend you do, first of all, is install the updated video driver. So in order to do that, we're going to go into Windows Setup, Options, change system settings. Where it says display is VGA, you can click on the drop down, and if you scroll to the very bottom, it'll say other display. Then here it is in the C:\S3 folder. And then I get to pick what display I want. I generally pick 1024 by 768, 64K colors with a small font because, I don't know, that's just what I like. So I hit OK, and we hit OK again. Once again, restarting Windows doesn't really help you in this particular case. So I'm just going to say continue because I don't really care right now. So we say OK. And then at this point, because we're still in Windows, we can go to the control panel, and you're going to go to drivers, and you're going to add the Sound Blaster 1.5. Hit OK. It's going to ask you where is your Windows for Workgroups setup, and in my case it was at C:\WFW311. All right, this is where the setup files were, not where Windows is, but where the setup files were. And it's going to pop up and ask you where does your Sound Blaster live, and it lives at 220 and 7 inside DOSBox. So port 220, interrupt 7, hit OK. It's going to give you this message here. You just say, yeah, that's fine. And at this point, we're going to again say don't restart. And we're going to close this, and we can close Control Panel. Now, if you're not familiar with Windows 3.11, there is no X in the upper right corner. Instead, you double-click in the upper left corner where the little minimize button is. So double-click, and that closes this. Again, if you're not familiar with Windows 3.11, in order to get out of Windows, then you have to, there are multiple ways to get out, but one of the easiest ways is to, in Program Manager, click File, exit Windows, and OK. So again, that gets us out of Windows. Control F10 so I can get my mouse back. I'm going to close DOSBox, and I'm going to launch DOSBox once again. Now, at this point, we've got Windows up and running and should be configured. So I'm going to type Win. And you notice we get the Windows welcome sound for Windows 3.11. We still have this Windows for Workgroups error. Again, don't worry about that. Hit OK. And you'll notice that the icons look a whole lot better because we are technically in 1024 by 768, although I have it maximized out here in DOSBox. So I know it's a little misleading. It's not really in HD. I just have it stretched to HD. All right, so that brings us to setting up our actual TCP/IP networking. And the way that works is we go into File Manager, and as long as you downloaded the PCTCP files, that should have broken out, if I'm not mistaken, that was in a zip file, and there were these series of disks 1 through 9, and that is how you install the PCTCP. I've tried to use the Microsoft TCP/IP protocol, and I can't get it to work. Doesn't mean it won't work. So if you are so inclined and you're able to get it working without the method I'm about to describe, please, by all means, share it. I would much rather use what's built into Windows than some third party. However, this third party system works. So having said all that, I'm going to click on the Disk 1 folder, and then I'm going to come over and I'm going to double click Setup. When I do that, I get the FTP software. Welcome to the setup program. Continue. Accept. It's going to pop up. I'm just going to take the Express because that's perfectly fine. Now it's going to ask you for the serial number and the authentication key. And those are located in a file that is inside the Disk 1 folder. That file is called password with exclamation points. So you just type in the code. It's going to ask you where do you want it to go. Just hit continue. Notice that it detects that we have a packet driver for our NE2000. When you get to this point, if for some reason all that's here is install a new driver or this is blank, then for some reason something has gone wrong. Just go back through the steps, especially that config file. Look at the NE2000 section and make sure that it's working correctly. So continue. I'm going to do DHCP, meaning that I'm going to get my address from my local internet service provider's router. If you are so inclined, you can assign an IP address, but for the most part, I would pick DHCP. Hit continue. Then this is what is a name that you want when you're connecting to remote systems. You type in whatever you want. So I'm Frederf and continue. Then pick your time zone, continue, and continue to copy the files. And then this is going to copy all of the files from those various disks into the PCTCP folder on the DOSBox-C drive, right inside that C- folder. It'll copy all of this, and then when it gets done, do you want it to update autoexec? Yes, we do. And then you'll notice that it created a whole bunch of icons, and then it comes up here and just says, hey, this is what everything we've done. That's fine. Just hit OK. Now, again, restarting the system is not going to help you because DOSBox-X does not reboot correctly. So I'm just going to hit continue here, and then I'm going to notice that there's like all kinds of windows open back here. So if you notice, File Manager is opened huge in the back here. I can again hit the little double click the minus in the upper corner. That's going to close that. That gives me back to Program Manager. Once I'm in Program Manager, if I want to, I can close these little windows. So you can do that whenever you want. And then I'm going to File, Exit Windows. Notice you get the exit sound. Then again, Control F10, give me my actual mouse back. Close that. All right. And so there is where we have our TCP/IP network up and going. Before you launch DOSBox again, there are a couple of things that we can do to help fix some of the errors that we've been getting. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go up to that C- folder and double click it. And then you are going to right click on autoexec.bat and choose edit. So I right click edit, and then it's got some stuff in here. The first thing we're going to do is you're going to go down and you want to delete this Windows Net Start because that's not working with our current setup. So you delete that. Another thing that you want to do is go down and delete the last line, which says PCTCP iDrive. So you want to take that out of there. And then on the very last line where you just deleted that, you want to type the following command: path equals %path % semicolon z : /. All right. Because for whatever reason, it doesn't add z, which is the path that DOSBox needs. So we want to make sure we put that in there. Those of you that know how to handle autoexec.bat and combine lines, you know a different way to fix that. That's absolutely fine. You can actually put all of the path statements on one line. That works just as well. I'm just trying to keep things simple. All right. So that is the end of autoexec. So we're going to close that. And yes, we want to save it. Then we need to go into the Windows folder. So we're going to go into Windows. And we're going to go down to the system.ini file. So here's a system.ini file here. Double click to open that one. And there are a couple of things in here that we need to get rid of. So in this first section called the boot section, because it says boot at the top, in the boot section where it has PCTCP chain, we are going to take that out. And then down near the bottom, you will find a network section. And in the network section, we want to take out where it says WinNet equals, because we're not doing WinNet. So you want to take that out. And I usually delete that just so we clean up some of that white space there. All right. So that takes care of those two things inside the system.ini file. We can close that and save it. That, at this point, should let us get into our DOSBox-X with Windows for Workgroups without any errors. In order to do that, I'm going to have to go back to my DOSBox-X folder, double-click DOSBox-X, and a couple of things should happen at this point. You're going to notice that, first of all, when you launched it, we now have some new things that pop up here. One of them is this DHCP server, and you'll notice that I got an IP address from my router. That tells me right there that at this point, this machine is able to get on the internet. All right, so I'm going to go back into Windows. Oh, I forgot. There is one thing. This is telling you that the network driver says that interdrive is not loaded. Yeah, interdrive doesn't work. So I'm just going to say don't show this message and click OK. That brings us back in here. If I go to this PCTCP WinApps folder, I double click that, and then I bring up ping here. Now I should be able to ping google.com, start, and I should send and received should be equal. Now, depending on your internet connection and if things get weird, you may end up a little off, but for the most part, they should be really, really close. You should be looking at a 100% or close to 100% success rate. You can stop that at any time. That lets you know that the internet is working in Windows 3.11 on your own computer. How about that? All right, so that's great, but we still don't have a way to actually surf the internet. So let's surf the internet. What we're going to do is we're going to install Netscape. So I'm going to double click on File Manager, and then you'll see that over on the left there is the Netscape -1. That's the Netscape folder. I'm going to run Setup. This is going to install Netscape Navigator 3. Like I said, you can do 3, you can do 4, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to do next. Do I want Cool Talk? No, I don't. Next again. And this is going to install Netscape so that we can surf the internet like it's 1993. All right. Once this gets done, it's going to pop up here. No, I don't want to read the README. I don't care. Finish. And this is say, do you want to connect to Netscape's setup site to continue the setup? You can say yes, but it doesn't exist anymore. So I'm just going to say no and save myself the trouble. Now we've got Netscape Navigator installed. I can double click Navigator. It's going to pop up, yes, I accept, like any other agreement. It was unable to open the bookmark file because there isn't one because it's a brand new install. So we just hit OK. And then it can't get to homenetscape.com because it doesn't exist. But what does exist is I can click up here and I can replace this just like, your regular web browser and go to Pad Circus, P-A-D circus.com. And when you go to padcircus.com, that is going to go to a little web page that I set up specifically so that this would work. So there you go. Eventually, maybe on this page, I'll add some links to sites that actually still work in 3.11. I don't know. One of the problems you're going to find is, first of all, because HTTPS is a requirement for most sites are not going to work. They're just not compatible with the very old school SSL that Windows 3.11/Netscape had, and Internet Explorer for that matter. So you're going to have a hard time surfing the web. Just be aware of that. There are supposedly some solutions. I tried a couple of, basically it lets you redirect requests and it captures them from your actual host machine, but I couldn't get any of them to work. So again, if you know how to make that work, by all means, let me know because I would love to share that with everybody else. All right, so that is Netscape. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'll go ahead and close this window as well. If you want to install Internet Explorer, then I've got IE5. Again, you can go download that. I've got links to all that stuff in the setup and in the description as well. So you can do that. I do definitely recommend installing WinZIP. I say that. What happened to my WinZIP? Oh, I forgot. Sorry, WinZIP is actually its own file. So I recommend installing WinZIP, and that is, I've got WinZip 5. So you double click it and it installs actually in DOS, which is a little weird. After you double click on the WinZip file, you're going to go to File Manager, make sure you're in your C drive, and then you're going to double click WinZip EXE. and it's going to say, hey, this is WinZIP, and yeah, I agree. And it's going to ask you if you've got some DOS-based applications. I wouldn't worry about this. Just hit OK. That's fine. Yes, add it to the accessories group. And, of course, once it's done, it pops up. And so now you have WinZIP, which will allow you to unzip files that you stick in your C drive. So if I close the file manager and I go back to accessories, you'll notice that now in accessories, I have a WinZIP. Yay. Other things you want to install, if I go back into File Manager, I've got my WP61, which is Wordperfect, so I can go through Setup there. I don't know that I double-clicked. There we go. I want to install. I'm going to do Standard. Yeah, that's fine. It's going to go through setting up Wordperfect 6.1 because there's nothing like word processing in 2020 like it's 1993. But, you know, hey, it's the fun, crazy stuff that you can do just because you can. That's what this is all about, right? All right. All right, when it gets done, you want to read the README? No, you don't. You never do. And it was successfully installed. At this point, you could double click on Wordperfect. And of course, there's no printer, but who cares? Do you want the quick start coach? No, you don't. It's a word processor. We know how to use word processors. So there you go. And it's Wordperfect. Yay, us. All right, so I'm going to close Wordperfect. And no, I'm not going to save because I don't care. And so now we've got multiple things set up running in DOSBox for Windows for Workgroups. Awesome stuff. Now, I'm going to exit Windows real quick. We've got Windows up and running. One of the things we haven't tested yet, of course, is any kind of DOS gaming. So, come get some. We're going to do some Duke Nukem here. And we'll just... oh, I guess I could have hit a letter, but that's fine. It'll run. And at this point, we should get... So, as you can see, this plays. Now, I have it stretched. So, if I were to get my mouse back, Control F10, and if we were to restore the window, then you can see this is the actual size. So, if you want to see what it really looks like. So, if we do a new game.
Let's rock.
Now, remember, my mouse is not back in there. Now I have mouse control inside the game. I ran a little too fast. So, there we go. Now, I'm going to Control F10 to get my mouse back and expand this back to full size because it's
Cool.
Give me the gun.
I'm gonna get medieval on your asses.
I hate that. And then, of course, we can go over here. Shoot that dude in the window. Whoosh. I'm gonna jump down here. Let's go trigger that guy. Punch. We got this dude over here. What a mess. So, anyway, there you go. Duke Nukem. Alright, so quit Duke Nukem because, you know, that's a thing. There you go. So, that is setting up DOSBox-X with Windows for Workgroups, with Internet, running DOS games, running whatever you want to run pretty much inside Windows for Workgroups. There you go. Now, there is one other thing that I want to show you before we go. And that is if I quit DOSBox, because again, once you get out of Windows, you have to restart DOSBox in order for it to catch everything. It's a weird deal. But we're going to go back into Windows. And this time, I am going to install, if I go back to my C drive, one of the things that is in the list to download is the Calmira-XP. And in my experience, you have to start with 3.3.3 before you can go to 4.0 beta. I don't exactly know why and or if that's just me being stupid. But anyway, this CalXP, I'm going to double click CalXP and I'm going to install this. And I'm just going to say next and yes and next, install. I don't care about the README file. I'm going to finish. Now, one of the things that is kind of weird about this is you'll notice again, File Manager is opened, maximized in the background. So I'm going to click on File Manager and I'm going to close File Manager. Otherwise, it's just kind of in the way. When you double click Calmira-XP, it starts up and notice you get a little help window that's just like Windows XP. In fact, it even has a tip screen every day if you want it to come up. And it acts just like Windows XP. Now, I know it looks like Windows 95 right now or Classic XP, but I have a start button. I can go to programs. There's whatever games are installed. I also have settings. If I go to the control panel, these are all of the items that are in the regular control panel. It is so cool. It really is. I will do a whole separate video on Calmira-XP at some point just because it deserves its own video. It is such a cool environment. And by the way, so that was the first version, the 3.3.3. If I now go into File Manager and instead, or in addition, now I do the XP 4.0 beta and I tell it yes. And we install it. There's a newer file. Just, keep the existing file. Sure, overwrite. I don't care. No, I don't want to read me. Again, I have to close File Manager. And I now have this Calmira-XP. And this, if I'm not mistaken, this should be the new one. Oops, sorry. That was my bad. If we go back in. All right. So now if I do Calmira-XP, you'll notice that because I installed 4 beta, this even looks more like Windows XP. Look at this. You have the actual Windows XP start button. You have a revamped XP menu button. Look at the programs, work and act a whole lot like they do in Windows XP. Again, you got control panel, desktop, all kinds of stuff. There are other cool things like you have quick access buttons down here. So if I wanted to, I could right click and I could add an item. So just for the sake of argument, let's say I want to do Wordperfect. I come down here to the file and I tell it that I want to do Wordperfect, which is actually, in the Office, WP Win, and I hit OK. Notice now I have a Wordperfect icon. So I click down here and sure enough, it fires up Wordperfect. There are so many options, so many things you can do with Calmira. It is very, very cool. Just because it turns Windows 3.11 into a very 95/XP environment because, why not? So anyhow, there you go. I know this was a long video. I hope you were able to just stick with me. I appreciate those folks who stuck it out and hung out to watch how to install Windows for Workgroups with internet access on DOSBox-X. And this is version 0.83.6. Hey, got any questions, problems, suggestions, horror stories? Feel free to leave those down in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. I want to give a very special thanks to Gamer Gull, Hero of God, and Los Wilco for supporting me on Patreon. You can check that out, patreon.com/davidinark. Again, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.